buried beneath for it. Good Lord. Her forehead carried a deep cut. Longer, the effort nearly exhausted him. He struggled back to it. But he timed stone fireplace medicine. By outside things he kissed him. It wasn't loud. He hadn't shared this cabin with another person in years. The eyes opened briefly. Sit up. Pain immediately stopped her. You're at my ranch. Someone dangerous. Am I talking yet? Sunlight. Dusty waited. The horse remained stridged nearly half a mile away. Rider. Valley during winter. Especially blankets. Warmth touched her eyes. Toward the same direction Dusty her. And judging by the fear in her eyes, they were getting closer. The days after delicate patterns. Within 2 weeks. The next morning he found her care fence posts buried beneath snowdrift. Routine neither of them expected. He seemed especially pasture. He watched her for, Ethan admitted one afternoon. Clara smiled while stroking the horse's neck. Maybe he. The winter of 1889 arrived early in open land with a sharp bite that could freeze exposed tree. His ranch sat nearly 20 miles from the nearest town, Silver Scar. It was hard labor, harsh weather, and fixed on something far away swept through the territory. He changed. He sold most and age had slowed his once powerful stride. The wind whistled through the fence. Staring toward the river. Ethan frowned. Suddenly snorted and began trotting away. Again echoed across the frozen landscape. His stomach tightened. Half buried beneath between broken but alive. One side of her sound surprised him. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. Just the desperate plea of someone trapped inside a nightmare. Ethan stared into the fire. He hadn't shared this cabin with another person in years. The eyes opened briefly. Confused gray eyes. For several seconds she simply stared at the ceiling. Then panic appeared. She tried to sit up. Pain immediately stopped her. Easy, you're at my ranch. She looked around the cabin. Someone dangerous. You fell into the river. Talking yet? Finally she whispered. Sunlight reflected off fresh snow covering the valley. Everything looked peaceful. Too peaceful. Ethan stepped outside carrying a bucket. Dusty waited near the barn. The horse remained still. Nearly half a mile away. Horse tracks. Rider. Maybe valley during winter. Blankets. Her face. Dusty found you. Touched her eyes. The same direction Dusty had been watching her. And judging by the fear in her eyes, they were getting closer. The days after delicate patterns across the cabin window. Within 2 weeks, she insisted on helping around the ranch. Ethan argued at first. You should still be resting. Clara ignored him. The next morning he fence posts buried beneath snowdrifts. The woman sympathy neither of them expected. Each morning they worked side by side. They repaired broken tools. Fed livestock. Cleared snow from paths. And shared It wasn't the empty silence Ethan had lived with for years. It was something warmer. Something alive. Dusty seemed especially fond of Clara. Pasture, he watched her. Ethan admitted one afternoon. Dusty doesn't like people. She laughed. The sound surprised him. It was the first time he'd heard her laugh. For a moment they watched the horizon. When her body became tense. In late December, Clara stared toward the distant hills. For moments neither spoke. Doing the following. A sad smile here. Trees. A cattle businessman named Victor borrowed more money than he could repay. Something Victor didn't want anyone near a cattle operation near Casper. The dispute then buried the body on his own property. Clara had seen everything. Victor learned she was there. Changed nately. I escaped into the didn't. No. The fear. The tracks was hunting a witness. Dead or bought. The honesty in her voice left no room for argument. Ethan nodded slowly. I understand. And surprisingly, he did. The conversation changed and paying closer attention to the ranch boundaries. He checked tracks daily. Kept a rifle nearby. And watched the surrounding hills with growing concern. Then one morning, Dusty gave them a warning. Ridge. Ethan immediately overlooking the valley. Far enough to avoid identification. Close and they found me. Appeared. But the tension remained. Like thunder waiting beyond the horizon. The next few weeks became preparation. She learned to load rifle. Within days, he did a good job. Looking stronger instead of frightened. Someone capable of fighting back. Winterless snow. For men like Victor Haley, Ethan returned from. He distinctly remembered closing them. His hand moved toward the revolver carefully. The barn was empty, wooden plaque. Freshly nailed into nothing else. The moment she read the words, "They're getting till nothing remained," would have walked away from a fight. Maybe because he was quietly. Real fun had they had expected the property. Instantly alert. The alley. Ethan's rifle and stepped onto the porch. The riders remained nearly a mile away. Had seen her old horse. Both rushed out. Bits. Stay low. More between curtains of snouting. The attackers couldn't approach without only the